Hi there, I'm Dylan and I'm back again because I've gotten a fair few questions and DMs about my thoughts on the Ricoh GR IV a couple of months later, or also earlier, but I've been busy, I've been sick, anyway. So I'm kind of going to structure these. This isn't a review, I want to state that. This is not a review, this is like a couple of months later impressions, I guess. I'm going to structure that by describing first my use case, secondly build quality, third battery, fourth I'm going to go into storage and micro SD, and then how that kind of relates to an issue I have with Capture One, and then onto the in-camera noise reduction engine, and then finally just a little point about Ricoh's different versions, and then I'll just quickly conclude. So starting off, my use case, the Ricoh GR IV here is just like the Ricoh GR II before it. For me, a journaling camera. It's a personal camera. I'll use it on occasion for some paid stuff, but very rarely. It's really more of a personal camera. It's like the camera that you keep strictly for personal use, and that's kind of how I see the GR IV. I haven't actually used GR IV for anything paid yet, so I'm going to keep it that way, I think, because I'm really enjoying just having it as my little point and shoot. And that's really what it is. They added with the GR IV, I think they technically added it with the GR III, but it wasn't integrated in the same way. The program mode, you can actually turn the dials either on the front or the back, and then control either the aperture or the shutter speed. And that's a really fun way to basically leave it in program mode. And then when you do want to control aperture or shutter speed, you still have access to it, but you still remain within the framework of program mode if you turn it off and on again. It's a snapshot camera, and one of the major reasons why I actually decided to go for the GR IV was that I previously used GR II for all these kind of personal events, and the autofocus is pretty bad. So I use snap focus, and that's fine for me, but it means that if ever I hand it off to somebody, I have to either preset it or hope that they happen to just be right. And for example, I took quite a few photos at one of my close friends' bachelor party and wedding, and I don't think there's a single photo with me in focus. So that kind of was like, that's fine, you know, it happens. The important thing is that the moment is captured. But I would like to have some photos of myself in focus, which is maybe a little bit, I don't know, egotistical. So basically, in a nutshell, the GR IV is a journaling camera for me. I know a lot of people use their phones. I don't really like using my phone for taking photos. Like I'll do it and it works, but I like having a specific camera as a camera. Anyway, moving on, point two, the build quality. I think the build quality of the GR IV is overall good, just as good as the GR III and 3X, possibly better because they've addressed certain issues, new dust filter or something I think they added over the sensor, or like they added some kind of function, and it's supposed to have better dust removal in the vibrations. I think the GR II is better built. It's more durable. I've never carried this in case I've tossed it around, I've abused it. It's scratched up, but it just keeps going. I realize at some point it may stop going, like all things in life, but I feel like it's very good. The GR IV, however, does have an IBIS unit, which really improves low light performance compared to the GR II. But for the GR III, that has been a weak point, and I've heard of them breaking. And I'd be lying if I said that I didn't worry that with this one, it would break. So I have been a little bit more careful. I've been carrying it in a little pouch and trying to just not shake it around like I have with the GR II. Going on from the build quality, the battery got improved from the GR IV, in the GR IV from the GR III. It's still a downgrade compared to the GR II. The GR II has a better battery, but the GR IV has a better battery. And in my use case, it's perfectly fine. I use it as a snapshot camera. I turn it on, I take a couple of photos, I turn it off. And usually I can charge it up very easily, especially now that we've got USB-C on the GR IV. Well, it was already on the GR III, but there was a very annoying power cable that had to be used for the GR II. And God forbid you lose that cable while traveling, because then you're absolutely screwed out of luck. And so for that reason, I have 5 batteries for my GR2, because I found it easier to charge them while plugged in somewhere and then be able to swap them in and out as I go over a trip. With the GR4, that's no longer a concern. I haven't bought any spare batteries. I just have a USB-C cable that I carry and I charge, and that works fantastic. Very happy with that. One aspect of that, though, is that in adding the larger battery, the normal SD card slot was removed and a micro SD slot was added plus internal storage. Initially, I thought that was kind of cool because, I mean, these are snapshots, so it's not like you have heavy requirements on the micro SD card or even a normal SD card, so that doesn't really bother me in that sense. However, Ricoh used what I believe is called MTP storage rather than just normal USB mass storage, and that actually is quite frustrating because it means that my iMac does not recognize the drive of the GR4 when I plug it into the computer. That also means that Capture One doesn't automatically recognize it and allow me to import it. It means that I have to use a secondary tool, the image capture tool, and then from there I first import the images to my desktop, and then from my desktop then I can import them into Capture One. And yeah, okay, that's not the end of the world, but it's an extra step and it's kind of frustrating. So hopefully that gets fixed soon. I don't know if Capture One will be updated or where the issue lies, but that kind of irritates me a little bit. Talking about Capture One, in case you are a Capture One user, if you're not, feel free to skip it, or this section, sorry. Capture One does not yet support the GR4, and it took about 1.5 years or so to support the GR3 and 3X. So I don't feel super positive about that, especially considering that the Pentax K3 Mark III is supported. So and that uses the same sensor. So to me, it's like, why can't you just do that pretty quickly? But I'm not an engineer, so I apologize if anybody is out there and I might be wrong on that. There's an additional point to that, which is that because it's not technically compatible with the GR4, it applies quite heavy noise reduction, and that ends up making images look soft and horrible. What I found as a workaround is, I found in this old forum where people had issues with the K3 Mark III when it was first released and wasn't compatible. And what people do is basically go to the noise reduction tab, and then you take your luminance and you turn that to 0, and that should technically cut out any noise reduction happening. And so that's a workaround, and that does work. But because of that, I've actually decided to kind of go in the direction of creating recipes. I'm still working on my own ones. I'm not quite happy with where my own ones are. I've got a black and white one that I'm still working on, and one that's more like tungsten balanced, because I quite like that look. And both of those aren't ready, so I'm still working on them, slowly kind of tweaking them. But I did use Samuel Streetlife's Istanbul recipe that he came up with, and I gotta say, that is very nice, pretty much perfect for most scenarios. So I've basically been shooting in that constantly. Finally, after that sort of long detour on the Capture One stuff, apologies to any Lightroom users, but I don't really agree with Adobe's practices, so that's why I've moved on. Ricoh annoyed me in that they recently announced a monochrome version of the GR4. And I know a lot of people have wanted a monochrome Ricoh GR for a long time. And while I still see a use case in a color Ricoh GR, I'm very, very tempted by a monochrome version. And if they'd announced that at the same time as the normal version and the HDF version, there's a good chance I would have waited to get the monochrome version. Who knows, I might sell this one and get the monochrome one. I'll see. When it comes to that, it comes to that, and that's further down the line. And then just finally, talking about the HDF version, I don't really see a point in HDF versions. That's just me. I don't really like it, but I will say that the Ricoh GR4, while it has a sharper lens, it also seems to have, in low light scenarios, you have like a slight halation or softness around highlights. So if you have a street light or something like that, it does bloom a little bit, and it's actually quite a nice look. So I think for a lot of people that maybe want the HDF version for that, maybe just consider the normal version as it's enough. I think the HDF version is quite heavy and not my thing. So just to summarize, I want to state once again, the Ricoh GR is a personal camera for me. It's not like my Sony, which is filming me right now, where I use it for gigs. This is a personal camera. I take photos with it, snapshots, and then I often print those photos. And that's basically how I see this camera. It's like, think of how people used in the late 90s and early 2000s digicams or disposables or, well, classic point and shoots. That's basically my scenario for this. Is it expensive for that? Yeah, you could argue it's not essential, especially when everybody has a phone nowadays that can take pretty solid photos. But as a photographer, as somebody who loves point and shoots and compact cameras, this is absolutely what I would choose. And it's fantastic that I can just carry this around wherever I go, any day, whenever I want. In a couple of weeks, my girlfriend and I are going traveling, and we travel very light. We only have a single backpack each. And this is the camera that I'm going to take. I'm not going to take any other camera. I'm just going to take this, and that'll do, because it's going to get any memories that I want, and then later when I get home I can print them, and that's that. So just to conclude my 2 and a bit month impressions, I'm a big fan of the GR4. I think if you're interested in the GR4 and your use case is similar to mine, you'll be happy with it. If you want it to be your only camera, but you also want other cameras and you're kind of new to photography, then I don't recommend it. I recommend going for like a Sony APS-C camera or something else like in that sort of sense. I think this is a good secondary camera. I would never recommend it as your primary camera. That being said, thank you for watching. I hope I answered some of the questions that were being asked and gave more thoughts on that. I appreciate the time that you've spent watching this. I don't know how long this is, but I feel like I've probably gone a bit overboard on time. I meant for this to be very brief, so thank you for watching and have a great day.